Hello, everybody. Welcome. I'm leecamp, joined by Eleanor Goldfield. We have a lot of breaking news for you. We have protests going on around the world, around the nation. President Xi is in the United States for the first time in a long time. And where brutal police were really attacking people for blocking the entrance, as you can see there.
Not so side note.
Oh shit! Someone just got thrown. People getting thrown down the stairs. People getting thrown down the stairs. Yo.
Well, I don't want to talk about that.
Yeah, so this unfolded last night.
So you can't talk. I was going to talk. Okay, so just not so side note. The cops that you see here are U.S. Capitol Police. Funny side note. DC has roughly 40 different law enforcement agencies that all have varying jurisdictions across the city because it's such a mess of a city in terms of federal versus local. This is U.S. Capitol Police, and every single member of the Democrats voted to increase the U.S. Capitol Police's budget following the January 6th. I don't want to douche canoe march. I don't know. What are we calling it? And so the people you see ripping sockets, ripping arms out of sockets and the like there, that is thanks to your tax dollars giving the U.S. Capitol Police more money with which to pull joints out of sockets. So there you go, friends.
Yeah, thank you, Biden. Biden has also said he wants more cop cities around the nation. Cop City being that horrific project down in Atlanta. We also have, and we're going to be bringing you some inside information about the raid, the attack on Al-Shifa Hospital, where the IDF has gone in there, one of the last remaining functioning hospitals in all of Gaza. They've destroyed it, and they've, what they're claiming about it. I'm going to be getting to that in a few minutes. I wanted to show first, though, some of these other protests. This one at the...
Oh, can I just take a second? Okay, so the protesters also outside the DNC were predominantly with the Jewish Voice for Peace, or If Not Now, which means that they're Jews. And for those just joining, this was footage outside the DNC headquarters in Washington, D.C. It's right next to the Capitol building, kind of like behind it. And so these are Jewish protesters. Meanwhile, the Democrats, in their continued show of how not anti-Semitic they are, invited a guy who called Hitler a half-breed Jew to a protest in Washington for Israel on November 14th. So I just want everybody to sit with that contradiction for a second as we move along the show.
Take that in and
just
try and
marinate
process
in that for a second.
And I do want to add that clearly the suppression is heavy today. Normally we have hundreds of people easily watching the beginning of these live streams. Right now it's at 77, and it seems like YouTube is barely working.
Well, the hospital siege is
is the suppression.
You should have called it puppy cat meow friends.
That was yesterday's live stream. That was yesterday's.
Okay.
This is at the Bay Bridge in San Francisco, where Biden is right now because of the meeting with President Xi, and they have shut down that bridge, which is pretty incredible. And so here's video of that going on. And, if you want to talk for a second about why this is effective, because I remember when it comes to climate actions, people often go, well, it's not fair, you're stopping someone from getting to their job. But especially with something like this, it's like a genocide is going on, and I'm sorry if you were late to work.
To quote a good friend of mine, Scott Crow, he said, we're not a church, we're not looking to convert people. The point is to show that this is really inconvenient. How do you think the people being genocided feel? Or if it's Black Lives Matter, how do you think that the Black people being gunned down by cops feel? The point is not to be like, hey, excuse me, can I borrow a moment of your time? That's not what these type of actions are for. These type of actions are supposed to disrupt the typical day-to-day, because there's nothing that should be typical in day-to-day about an ongoing genocide. So the point of this is to highlight how unacceptable the moment that we're living in is. And so moments like these are really, really powerful, because even if people that are stuck in traffic are like, oh, F these people, it's like they are still forced to look. And so much of this has been, people sharing images of like, don't look away, do not look away from Gaza. So this is one of those moments where you are forcing people to interact with this issue. And that is important, because this should not just fall away from the news cycle because, CNN's ratings are going down or some shit.
Yeah, that's half the reason they're not covering it. The other half is they don't want to show the horrors of the U.S. empire. But I want to show one more protest before we move on. This is also in San Francisco. I believe this is also Jewish Voice for Peace.
Yeah, I see it. Jews.
Wait, I should look where this was. This was with NATO Green, in Oakland, 600 Jews occupying the Oakland Federal Building. So that's this one. But very powerful images from, like we're saying, from around the nation.
And they're in LA, they shut down Hollywood and Highland. And for folks who don't know what that means, Hollywood and Highland is at the intersection right next to where the Oscars take place at the Kodak Theater. So it's the
intersection of Vapid and Distraction, I think.
I'm sorry, that's every intersection in Hollywood. But it's a very, very, like, I used to hate driving around that area, because it's always like a mess of tourists, and it's just like, it's a mess. So there's always a lot of people. So that was really amazing that they shut down that intersection with the same messaging, ceasefire. And I believe Jewish Voice for Peace was also a part of that. So really incredible actions throughout the country yesterday and in the past couple of days.
And a little later in this hour, we're going to get to the actions done against Cobb City, protesting Cobb City, and how they've been effective, which I find really fascinating. Like the tactics used to actually create change, to actually interrupt business as usual. And
sorry, I just wanted to share one of the comments from the comment section. Yeah, whatever. We can
for
only,
those of you hanging out in the then hope you're having a good time.
I'm just tired. It says we can only peacefully assemble if out of sight. And that's so true. The idea of right to assemble, which is part of the First Amendment, is laughable if you are actually out where people can see you and are disrupting anything.
Well, that is not allowed. So there are more big shutdowns. More big shutdowns planned for tomorrow. This coming from Answer Coalition and the People's Forum.
Tomorrow being Friday, November 17th.
Sorry, yes. I'm talking about November 17th. So I think if you look up Shut It Down, Palestine Shut It Down, you should be able to find information on this.
There's one happening in DC as well.
Yeah, I assume there's in a lot of cities, but the one I'm showing on the screen right now is New York City, Bryant Park, 5 p.m., Friday the 17th. But they're happening a lot, and they're happening around the country. So for those of you not in New York, look up events in your area. Okay, let's get to Al-Shifa Hospital, which you all don't need me to tell you that over 11,000 people have been murdered across Gaza. Enough bombs to equal two or more Hiroshima atomic bombs have been dropped on Gaza. There's countless war crimes. I mean, you couldn't even list them all if you tried, the war crimes that Israel is committing. And for those of you upset about the hostages, which is totally fine to be upset about hostages, I just want to make sure you're also upset about the 5,000 hostages Israel had before October 7th and the 5,000 more they've grabbed since October 7th. So I just want to make sure you're upset about all hostages equally.
Also, can I just, there was, I don't listen to this podcast, but The Intercepted had
I'm actually going to quote Jeremy Scale in a second.
Had a guest on, Sharif Kudus, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that, who made the great point, speaking of hostages and so-called terrorists, quote, "You're not allowed to bomb a hospital or a school just by claiming there's a military target underneath it. If there's a school shooter in the US, you can't go bomb the school to get rid of the shooter and kill all the children inside. Right. So
I
like just
argue you should be
imagine
able to. Absolutely.
just imagine if you were watching like CNN or something, they're like, and the police have just informed us that they'll be driving an MRAP into the school and detonating 2 bombs that they've now strapped to the playground equipment. Like you'd be like, what the that's you can't do that. That's insane.
The perfect equivalence is Waco. They drove tanks into Waco, Texas, and set the whole buildings on fire and burned countless people alive, including children. And then, and this doesn't mean that David Koresh was Mr. Wonderful, but you just can't. That's not how we behave in a moral universe. You don't just blow up a building because there's hostages in there.
Hostages, or I think you meant like military, quote unquote, military targets. Like the argument, we covered this a couple of weeks ago, like Wolf Blitzer asking, doing the modicum amount of journalism, asking IDF, like, but you knew that you were bombing a refugee camp where there were women and children. Also, can I just say that?
The women thing. Yeah.
Well, it's like, okay, so I guess men have no, it's okay. Anyway,
there's a fair point to be made there,
but anyway, so like you knew that there were human beings there that had no link to your so-called terror, and it's like, yeah, that is the appropriate question to ask. Just like I would want to know if they bombed a school with an active shooter in it, like, you knew that you were bombing a school, right? Like that was a thing that you knew, and that's not okay. Like we just accept that that's not okay, and yet when it has to do with Israel bombing the shit out of Gaza, everyone's like, well, that's just what you have to do.
So, and I'll be reading in a second from Jeremy Scahill, who he used to do a lot of great.
We don't have to.
Used to do a lot of great journalism, and now he doesn't do much. But anyway,
I think he's scared, poor guy.
Yeah, I don't know what it is, but so this is from Stephen Donziger posted this, but Mossad posted a photo of the IDF conquering Al-Shifa Hospital.
Wait, Mossad, by the way, is like the Israeli Secret Service.
Let me repeat that. They posted an image of a military conquering a fucking hospital. Like, this is so utterly insane. What kind of backward universe would you pose for this photo to be excited about conquering a hospital as people were dying? Several dozens, I don't know if it's hundreds,
including
but died that day.
NICU infants.
Yeah, that day in the hospital from not.
So while they're standing there taking a picture, these people who claimed that Hamas had beheaded 40 babies, which was very quickly called out as bullshit and debunked, as they're standing there taking that picture, the doctors had to pull NICU babies out of the incubators, and many of them have died. If not all of them. And so while you're this is legit, and I'm not making this comparison flippantly. This is legit Nazi shit. And this is very similar to the shit that we heard back, before the first Desert Storm. The Iraqis are pulling babies out of incubators and letting them die. Well, interesting that Israel
legitimately
is actually like, there are pictures, and we're not going to share them here. But there are pictures of babies having been pulled out of NICU incubators. This is a level of fucking monstrosity that I don't have language for. And I don't know if there actually is language for something this monstrous, because how would you even conceive of it? It's so horrific. But this is Israel. I mean, this is the state of Israel. Like, whatever your presuppositions or whatever you might think about Israel, I dare you to try and fucking defend this.
So, well said, first of all. But so here's Scahill making some points about this. He said, I don't have any inside information about Al-Shifa, which is currently being raided by Israeli forces, but here's some context. In 1983, Israel built an underground operating room and tunnels under the hospital. So the reason Israel claims to know that there's a Hamas command center underneath that hospital is because they built something that they believed could be used as a command center. Now, even if it were a command center there, it doesn't justify bombing and attacking and raiding a hospital. It's still a war crime. As we just said, if a shooter goes into a school, you can't just bomb the school and say it's justified. So to continue from Scahill, last weekend, the New York Times published a story saying Israel had shared images with the paper depicting alleged secret entrances to the tunnels, though the Times said it could not independently verify them. On Tuesday, the U.S. said that it has its own intelligence
which I doubt,
to back up claims. And John Kirby alleged it is Hamas Islamic Jihad Command and Control Center and site to hold hostages. Shifa Hospital staff have denied all these claims. Such allegations by the U.S. should be backed up by clear mountains of evidence, not, as Scahill says, a Geraldo Rivera Al Capone vault-style video presentation featuring an English-speaking IDF soldier who pointed at a calendar, which we showed that the other day, pointed at a calendar, and then they claimed to have found a few guns. No, but here's the key point: is no matter what is or is not found, there is no justification for the repeated attacks against civilian hospitals. In fact, Shifa is the largest hospital treating the most vulnerable people in Gaza, including NICU babies. The mere existence of tunnels originally built by Israel does not prove the specific allegations made by the U.S. or Israel. The standard for such evidence should be very high. And as he says, none of this, I don't care if you're the most sophisticated, I don't care if they go underneath that hospital and it looks like the deck of the Starship Enterprise. It doesn't matter. You still can't attack and cut off the power and cut off the water and cut off the food and destroy a hospital. It doesn't matter if there were a command center under there or not. So I think those are some key facts. And the point that Israel built these things in 1983 is not really a hidden detail. It's just not mentioned by most people who see. It's been in the mainstream media.
Yeah, well, the other thing is, like, a lot of these things aren't hidden. It's just that people either don't care or they find some way of ignoring it or denying it.
Yeah. So I want to bring next. This is UN. I don't have her name here, but she gave a great presentation on. If you can find her name, great presentation. She's a specialist on international law with the UN, and I'll just play. This is 2 minutes of her presentation.
With your permission, I will clarify what is self-defense under international law, and so that everyone can understand, well, there's not such a thing that Israel could claim. So in common language, self-defense...
there it is, Francesca Albanese.
The right to protect oneself. But however, Article 51 of the UN Charter that Israel has invoked is not just the right to protect itself. It's a self-defense under international law. It's a legal term of art and means the right to wage a war, which Israel doesn't have. And this is consolidated jurisprudence of the supreme judicial organ of the United Nations. I understand that state practice might diverge. United States and Iraq.
Oh, burn.
The law remains the law, and this is what we should follow. So the right of self-defense can be invoked when a state is threatened by another state, which is not the case. Israel has not claimed that has been threatened by another state. It's been threatened by an armed group. Qualify it the way you want, but it's an armed group within the occupied territory. And frankly, even saying the war between Gaza and Israel is wrong, because Gaza is not a standalone entity, it's part of the occupied territory. But so, in particular, Israel cannot claim the right of self-defense against a threat that emanates from the territory it occupies, from a territory that is kept under belligerent occupation. And this is not only this exists in the jurisprudence of the ICJ in general, it's also been said in the case of the occupied Palestinian territory.
Yeah, thank you, Francesca. That was well put.
Yeah, you can't. So it would be like the U.S. claiming a right to defense against a prison in the United States.
She's the UN Special Rapporteur on the occupied Palestinian territories, and she is an Italian international lawyer.
So because Gaza is occupied by Israel, Israel controls everything about Gaza, the amount of water that goes in, the amount of calories that goes in, whether anyone's allowed in or out. All of those things are controlled by Israel. It is part of Israel that Israel treats as an open-air prison. You can't claim we are defending ourselves against this prison we own. It's disgusting, and it's completely against international law to behave in this manner, no matter how you were attacked. So thought that was important.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so let's get to this pro-genocide rally that happened the other day,
dude,
in Washington, D.C. Many people there. Now, not all of them. Some of them were family members of mine were there. But some of the people, a fair portion of them, were paid. They were offering, Israel was offering $250 per college student to show up. Many were flown in and bussed in from out of state, with, I assume, that being paid for either by Israel or by big dollar Zionists in the United States. But that all aside the point, you had, sharing the stage, you had people like Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries, the leaders of the Democrats, as well as leaders of Republicans, on stage with people like Pastor Hagee.
Pray tell, who is that, Lee?
Well, let's watch this short video.
Is my firstborn son,
So for those of you listening to the podcast, he is the background audio is him speaking at the rally the other day. And on the screen, though, we're seeing quotes of his from various quotes of his over the years, including all Muslims have a mandate to kill Christians and Jews, unquote. He said, quote, women are only meant to be mothers and bear children, unquote. He's one of the most powerful anti-Semites in America.
And you heard that right. He's an anti-Semite. Because wait,
because he hates Jews, but he wants them all in Israel. You see how that works?
Because we covered this before, the Christian Zionists. Yeah.
So let's keep hearing what he said the other day.
Jerusalem.
Go ahead. You want to read it?
So he also believes, I mean, it would be funny if it weren't also, if he wasn't also a terrorist. So
there's so much of our world that's like that.
I know. So he also believes that, quote, God sent Adolf Hitler to help Jews reach the promised land.
The ones that survived.
No, Lee, he was just like a really intense tour guide. And it's not his fault if the Jews couldn't hack it on his guided tour to the promised land. And he says, basically, I regret if my Jewish friends felt any pain as a result of Hitler trying to guide them to the promised land. I'm not fucking kidding. This is what he said.
And he's on stage with Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries and others.
Jerusalem is the city of God. Jerusalem is the shoreline of eternity.
Just shoreline of eternity. Hear that? Whereby, by the way, Jews will either be forced to convert or will burn in eternal hell. I don't think he probably said that out loud, but that's what he believes. Again, we covered this before about what Christian Zionists actually believe. And can you go back to the and so this is fundamentally what he believes, that Jews have to be in Israel in order for the rapture to happen, so that the Jews will either convert and then no longer be Jews, right? Or burn in hell for all eternity.
So I would call that anti-Semitism. When you're rooting for Jews to be burned in hell, I call that anti-Semitism. I don't know. The people sharing the stage with him, maybe they call it being, tough love, I guess. I don't know.
Jerusalem is the eternal capital of Israel today and forever.
What did that one say?
It said he blames the Jews for the Holocaust. But here's what's also interesting is that that's not an uncommon line for Jewish Zionists as well. A lot of and I actually had this conversation with Nora Barrows Friedman a couple of years ago when I was talking to her about an article that I was writing or interviewing her for an article. And she said that oftentimes there will be Zionists in Israel who talk about how, well, it was the weak Jews who died in the Holocaust, the ones that survived and therefore were able to get to Israel. Those are the strong ones. And they're the ones that we wanted to survive anyway.
Like the babies.
So this is like legit a line of thinking that is used by the colonialist terrorists that run and founded Israel as well. And of course, the Christian Zionists are fine with that too. Obviously, it's really convenient to blame the Jews for the Holocaust as opposed to, blaming a imperialist colonialist structure that produced a madman like Hitler.
Well said. So I wanted to, cursor's not working. Before we move on to, oh God, there's so much good stuff. All right.
There's so much good, bad stuff.
So much good, horrible stuff. Let's do these first. Here's, for those of you, I bet there's a lot of you right now thinking like, but what does Alan Dershowitz think? Well,
I didn't know his name until I most people tell me who he is. I don't want to know more about this penis wrinkle than I have to.
He's the one who got O.J. Simpson out of prison. Most people know Alan Dershowitz, incredibly famous lawyer. O.J. Simpson trial was probably his first time getting that famous, but beyond that, he's had many other times. Many have accused him of being tightly connected to Epstein. And he's also been worked or supported Donald Trump. And here he is saying that sometimes attacking a hospital saves lives. In fact, I think
can we hear that again, please?
In fact, I think that was the title of his live show.
Actually,
sometimes attacking a hospital saves lives.
I think that was the title of Hitler's second book. It was the Mein Kampf sequel.
Yep.
Sometimes
the sequel didn't do as well, but I thought it's because they promoted it as a rom-com. I think that was it.
I just think it's because the leading lady didn't pull her weight.
Could be. All right, let's move on to information about these weapons contractors and exactly how much money and how involved they are with Israel. I should have soon a video out on corporations that are benefiting from Israel, supporting Israel's apartheid situation, apartheid state. But it's not out yet because it's taking a lot of editing. So we'll see. Maybe this week, maybe next week. But anyway, would you like to lead the way?
Sure. This is a code pink. Oh, well, I can.
What's wrong?
I was going to mention what happened to Medea at the November 14th pro-Israel.
I don't have that link. I could
No. I don't need to see it again. And okay. I don't know that folks. I just wanted to take a second.
Just say it.
So Medea Benjamin, who's the co-founder of Code Pink and really just a rad human being, was at she's Jewish as well. Which is pertinent just because of the sign she was carrying. She was at this pro-genocide rally on November 14th in DC, and she was just holding a sign. She wasn't like trying to interact with people or anything like that. She was holding a sign that said Jews, what was it? Jews for a ceasefire. Jews for a ceasefire. That's it.
That was it.
That's it. Not like, go fuck your face or anything. Like it wasn't.
It didn't say you can all burn in hell.
Right.
Yeah.
And she was horrendously verbally abused. I hope you get gang raped. I hope you burn. I hope you burn slowly. I hope you get tortured by a like all of this.
This is from people attending the
rally. So, and of course, a lot of vitriol based on the fact that she's Jewish. And so this is, interestingly enough, like you see this behavior copy and pasted in a lot of these instances. Like I remember outside the Venezuelan embassy, there was the same shit. They would be like, "I hope you get raped," but it's just like these.
There was a lot of calling the men who were joining and defending the Venezuelan embassy, calling them gay and stuff, like homophobic shit. Like,
yes, horrifically sexist and homophobic shit. But it's like you see this in all of these white supremacist, pro-war, far right-wing rallies. They all have the same. It's like they share notes. Like, hey, here's
But
our
what's
long list of
amazing-
chants, including "I hope you get gang raped." Like,
but
and
what's amazing is so many of the people at the rally are liberals who don't know they're standing up for far right-wing garbage.
well, Lee, I would feel some modicum of empathy for them, but I don't.
Oh, I'm not asking for empathy. I'm saying, isn't this insane that they have been so manipulated that they are showing up to support a genocide?
But that's the thing, is that they should know better. There is no excuse for not knowing better. This isn't like I wasn't sure what day trash pickup was. This is like not some this is not some like some simple shit that you could get wrong.
I'm not asking you to let them off.
No, but I'm
of
just-
your list of yelly subjects. I'm just saying, isn't that insane?
It is absolutely insane. So I just wanted to share that because it's atrocious, but it also shows really what kind of rally this is. Whereas like I mean, and I've been to counter protests, right, where like Nazis are showing up in DC or hell even in Charlottesville. Like there was nobody that like in our group that was yelling like, I hope you get gang raped. Like that's not what we do. You know, a lot of times there's even like clowns, like and I say this as somebody who is not like clowns, but I love these people, the anti-fascist clowns who bring like flour to protest, and then they throw it in the air and they say white flour. Like these people.
Actually, we should, since you're mentioning that, we should show this image.
Oh my God, this image is amazing. But anyway, so this highlights to me one of those questions that I've brought up before, which is you have to look at who else is on your side, because that will tell you a lot about what you might be missing in terms of your ideology, if it's a sound ideology. And when the people around you are yelling at people that they hope they get gang raped, that might be a moment for some self-reflection.
Yeah, that might
And
be a
as
moment
that's
to think about
happening,
that.
the guy on stage is talking about how, you know, the eternal city of Jerusalem and Jews are going to burn in hell. I mean, maybe stop for a second and be like, maybe we're on the wrong team.
How did we end up on this team? Since you mentioned the clowns and that type of activism, I got to show this. This is from the protests against Cobb City. But for those of you listening to the podcast, this is
What
a
an amazing
heavily militarized police officer. And clearly he's collected, he's taken some of the protest banners that they're holding up, and one of the ones that they were holding up in front of the
It's like
cops.
a dragonfly.
Oh, yeah, it is, I guess, a dragonfly.
It's like
I
a
was
giant
thinking,
puppet dragonfly.
and it says,
And on the wings, it says, "This is what a domestic terrorist looks like."
but you have a militarized police holding a sign saying this is what a domestic terrorist looks like.
God bless the photographers on the front lines. I mean, you just
Amazing.
Okay, but this was a tangent.
All
I
right, now you're
apologize.
not allowed to have any more tangents.
sorry,
You've
yes.
got to address the actual thing on the screen right now.
Or I have to leave.
Go.
Okay. This is a post by Code Pink titled, "Which American Companies Are Arming the Gaza Genocide?" So, first little tidbit of information you might be interested to know is that the US is Israel's largest arms supplier. That's probably not news, but between 2009 and 2020, more than 70% of Israel's weapons came directly from the US. 70%. I'm also horrified to tell you that some of them came from Sweden. The U.S. has exported, that was a small tangent, but I'm getting right back on track here. The U.S. has exported arms to Israel.
Oh, it says the source is Stockholm International Peace Research.
Yeah, the CPRI, they do actually a lot of good work. So not all Swedes are bad. The U.S. has
Never said that.
the U.S. has exported arms to Israel every year since 1961. Never taken a year off of supporting apartheid.
70% of the bombs being dropped on goddamn children coming from the U.S.
So you might have seen some protests against Elbit Systems. Now, Elbit Systems is the largest weapons manufacturer, and
For Israel.
for Israel, yes. Missiles, bombs, drones, gun systems, and ammunition. They also provide surveillance technology. Now, this surveillance technology has also been used by our lovely version of the Gestapo, the Border Patrol, along the border between the United States and Mexico. And so, yeah, again, like the deadly exchange, the sharing of not just information, but technologies, surveillance technologies. And who would know better than the people who have the largest, who oversee the world's largest open air prison, i.e. Gaza, who better to teach you about surveillance?
And Elbit is British. Goddamn Brits.
Lockheed Martin, they make, I can't believe we're still making the F-35. I mean, that giant hunk of metal that barely...
$1 trillion waste of space.
That barely gets off the ground.
You know, a trash can on the F-35 costs $51,000? I'm not kidding.
I know you're not kidding.
It's not a joke.
I know you're not kidding, Lee. It just reminds me...
Which is a trash can flying around inside a trash can. That's what's incredible about it. I mean, that is
a $51,000 trash can flying around in a multi-million-dollar trash can.
I think $1 billion trash can.
You know what? I just can't anymore. So these fighter jets, the F-35 and the F-16, have been used in every single Israeli assault on Gaza. Lockheed Martin made the bombs that were dropped on Al-Shifa Hospital. Raytheon manufactures weapon systems, rapid fire radar guided gun. I don't even know what that means. But these have been used to fire at Gaza fishermen and aid boats.
They also produce parts of the F-15, the F-16, and the F-35 fighter jets.
General Dynamics, again, makes bombs. And 2,000-pound bombs, by the way. They also make tanks that have been used in all assaults on Gaza and to patrol the Gaza Strip. You might have seen images or things like that where you see a kid holding a rock, throwing it at a tank. Well, that might very well have been a General Dynamics tank. Palantir, which I'm just going to go ahead and say sounds like a character from Dungeons and Dragons, but founded in Silicon Valley and funded by the CIA. Yeah. Palantir makes technology to surveil and target Palestinians. They have predictive policing tech, which
should be illegal. It's Minority Report shit.
That's the Tom Cruise movie?
Pre-crime.
Right. And you remember how, like, in the film, the whole like, the spoiler alert, the whole message of that film is that this shit doesn't work, like pre-crime,
and it's morally is ethically wrong because
right.
You're arresting someone for something they haven't done.
Like, that's the moral of the story. But Palantir didn't get that.
For some reason, we don't learn anything from sci-fi movies that show us how everything is going to be awful. We just go right into it. Boeing.
Boeing makes bombs, which Israel uses to destroy residential buildings, including refugee camps in Gaza. And they also make the Apache attack helicopters, which, as Gray Zone reported, were used on October 7th to bomb Israeli citizens. This coincides with the ongoing information that suggests and shows that a lot of the Israeli citizens who died on October 7th were actually murdered by Israeli forces. So, whoops, I guess.
Yeah, not really whoops.
No, I know. I'm sarcastic. Let me tell you how sarcasm works. Northrop Grumman, they manufacture key components for fighter jets that are currently being used. They also supply the Israeli Navy with, I don't know how to say that, a heavily armed missile ship, which are used in Israel's illegal naval blockade of Gaza. And I think just a little bit of geography. Gaza, the Gaza Strip borders the sea. Like, if you know the Mediterranean, the river to the sea chant, they're talking about the sea, the Mediterranean that is on the border. And there have been continuous efforts to try and bring aid into Gaza via the water.
Via the port that they used to be allowed to use, but no longer, but haven't been in
and
years.
People have been murdered trying to bring in aid. And of course, this is what that means when it's the naval blockade of Gaza. Gaza is in fact not landlocked. It borders the Mediterranean Sea, but it might as well be landlocked because Israel has effectively blocked access to Gaza from the.
They're allowed to fish something like a mile or 2 miles offshore, and if they go farther than that, they'll be shot. So they're not even allowed to access to their own waters. And then Woodward, which we don't hear much about because they're much smaller, but their name can actually be seen on the mortars that failed to explode. Obviously, when you drop thousands, occasionally some fail to explode. You get a dud, and they can actually read the bottom of these, and they say Woodward on them, which is a weapons contractor in Texas. So those are your lovely weapons contractors making billions upon billions of dollars as they rain down death and destruction on children and innocent people across Gaza. And when we say we're going to give billions of dollars of aid to Israel, that money is then a lot of it, 70% of it, often put back in the pockets of some of the richest Americans, some of the richest people in the world who run these weapons contractors, businesses, the people at the top of them, and into shareholders' pockets in general, if you own shares in our lovely weapons industry. So, okay, let's, so I got to get to President. I got so much to get to. I got to get to President Xi, but I'm not going to spend that long on President Xi's visit. But then I want to get to the Cop City tactics that have worked. Does that sound good?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's your show. You're the ringmaster, the ringleader, the ring.
Ringmaster? Is that a circus? Okay, but the rest of this. So I want to bring you some kind of hilarious tidbits about President Xi's visit. He's in San Francisco right now, if he hasn't left, but he just met with Biden, and they had a pretty good meeting, apparently. And I'm going to talk about that and some other aspects of it. So that and more, also the tactics of Cop City, the fight against Cop City that have worked quite well, which I love talking about that stuff. Okay, so that's coming up right now. Please.
Good news.
What?
So there is some.
Yeah, the tactics that have worked. So please join us at rumble.com/leecamp. It's free to go and watch there, as well as my locals page, rumble.com/leecamp. Join us over there. That's where this will continue. For those of you who are not making it there, I hope you will become a member at leecamp.net and support this show if you feel like you've gotten 38 cents out of this episode so far. But yeah,